The next question I'm going to ask of Senator Connor, you'll have 2 minutes to answer, then Mr. Squadron a minute to respond, and then Senator Connor a 30-second rebuttal. Though the past few years have been better, the state budget has been chronically late for 20 years and has often passed without much public scrutiny. In fact, the budget has been passed the last 2 years without legislators really knowing what they're voting on. What reforms do you believe are necessary to change that and ensure that there is enough public scrutiny and that legislators in fact know what they're voting on when they pass the budget? And what would you do to accomplish them?
Well, in those rules we initially adopt, I would make it a rule of the Senate, not waivable, that budget bills be in the hands of the members and therefore public, in essence be public, 3 days before there's a vote on them. And there actually is legislation proposed that would require that. I think Senator Liz Krueger sponsors a bill like that. I believe I'm a co-sponsor. So that's the way you do that. You just make it happen, and you make the people doing the work get the work done so you all see it. But I want to respond to something Dan said before, because he got to go last and take a shot at me. This myth that election lawyers, all we do is kick people off the ballot. Most of my cases have been defending someone and keeping them on the ballot against the rules that, particularly old rules that were particularly oppressive. So, you know, to say, you know, I wouldn't be an election lawyer, I certainly was available. I think the lawyers that represented Al Gore,
30 seconds left to answer your budget question.
There's this myth of what election lawyers do. Most of the work I do involve ballot recounts, defending candidates who someone's trying to kick off the ballot. But you know, back to your original question.
Yeah,
it's easy to make the budget public. You just pass a rule. You can put it in statute. You make the budget bill be on the members' desks, and you eliminate, by rule, the governor's ability to issue a message of necessity, in effect, to have immediate passage.
Okay. Mr. Squadron, before you respond, let me just remind the candidates that you'll have an opportunity to challenge each other with questions and revisit issues that you may feel you've been, you know, to respond to allegations or charges or comments made by your opponents. So let's try and keep our answers to the questions that are being asked. Mr. Squadron?
Okay, thank you. You know, messages of necessity are state constitutional. They're wildly overused right now. It's the reason we don't see, we don't have enough time to review bills. Legislators don't have enough time to review bills. It's a practice that shouldn't happen nearly in the way that it does. It shouldn't happen unless it's a necessity, which it rarely is relative to how much it's used. I would say that the other important piece of this is having real transparency when it comes to member items, pork, appropriations. I think that it's very, very important that we have better oversight, that we really explore, frankly, having all member items go through the state agencies, give legislators the ability to make recommendations. But I think we need to have a real discussion about member items no longer coming straight out of the legislature, certainly not the way they too often do now, which is without any real scrutiny or with very difficult opportunity. They're more transparent than they used to be. But you know, in Albany, sometimes more than terrible isn't good enough and isn't really even acceptable. And I think that's where we are when it comes to that issue.
Thank you. Senator Connor, 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, well, not a rebuttal. I agree on the member items. The fact is they don't come straight out of the legislature. They do go through agencies. And when there have been scandals involving some situations, I've always been amazed and disappointed that the agencies weren't monitoring the way they're supposed to. The ones I've sponsored, my directions to the agency always are, make sure they're really doing the job, you know, make sure everything's on the up and up. And I can honestly say, in all my years, I have never, ever suggested to any agency, local entity, Brooklyn Heights, Brooklyn Historical Society, any of them, that they hire a person. I've never made a recommendation for a hire. I've never viewed them as a way to build a political empire. And I've never asked for anything back other than do a good job, whether it's the Lower East Side Girls Club or Carroll Gardens Neighborhood Women or whatever. So I'm very proud of that record, and I get very, very angry at those instances where colleagues seem to have run afoul. And my answer always is, The agency should have monitored them, and it's why we have prosecutors put them where they belong.
Thank you.